Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Mind of Sai Marie. Today, we are looking at the boundaries of expectation, both the rigid structure society builds around us and the internal strength we muster to tear them down. My guest today has crafted a thrilling, brass and steam fueled world that serves as an incredible canvas for rebellion, autonomy, and unexpected alliances. Mandy Eve-Barnett is an Edmonton bestseller, a prolific multi-genre author, and a passionate advocate for the writing community. She is here to discuss her critically acclaimed steampunk novel, The Commodore's Gift, published by Dreamwrite Publishing. Mandy, it's an absolute pleasure to have you in the studio today.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm quite excited to discuss my book. It was fun to write, actually, because I like strong female characters.
So you've built a spectacular protagonist in Owena on that note. A woman whose strategic brilliance and swordsmanship completely fly in the face of Victorian expectations. What was the initial creative catalyst that made you want to drop a non-traditional, highly skilled female protagonist like Owena into the steampunk rebellion?
Well, to be honest, she was secondary when I first started writing a short story about a toy maker who is actually within this narrative but became a secondary character. And she was the one that was talking loudest at me when I was creating the story. And it was like, why not have someone within a steampunk genre who's female and strong and a leader? I'd read other steampunk books, obviously, and done some research. And I just thought it would be fun to have this female who puts herself forward as someone that's determined to help with the fight against this oppressive Buldrick Empire.
So, steampunk is such a rich and textured genre because it collides the strict social hierarchies of the Victorian era with forward thinking technology. How does this specific setting act as the perfect backdrop to structurally and visually highlight a woman's fight for autonomy?
I think most of the societal expectations are rampant in most societies, and steampunk is sort of typically male orientated. So I think to have someone who is fighting alongside, as opposed to trailing on the coattails, as it were, made it more exciting, I think, for a reader to see that you don't have to be society tells you have to be. You can actually put your best foot forward and say, right, this is what I can do. This is my strength. This is how I can improve what you're doing.
So, when Owena escapes captivity and joins the rebel forces, she doesn't just fall in line, she sees the failings of the encampment and starts organizing major changes. Why was it narrative critical to show even the good guys, the rebel encampment that is, have major flaws and broken systems that need fixing?
I mean, no military organization is perfect anyway. And so you have to look at, this thinking that it's going to disrupt the basic need of people, male and female, because they need physical and emotional needs to fight better. And when those are met, then your actual fighting force becomes stronger because physically they're able, they're strong, they've been fed well, they've slept well, they're equipped well, rather than just let them struggle on. And I think that's how you stop a broken system from, destroying your ability and your winning of a war or a conflict.
So, let's talk about her champion, this giant of a
Mm.
man, feared by everyone as a killer. Instead of a traditional protective dynamic where she is shielded, they build a bond on mutual respect and absolute equality. How do you craft and write a romance built on absolute equal respect and partnership in a historically oppressive era?
Well, I think it comes down to respect of another's skill, no matter the gender. Galen accepts and admires Owena for her determined strength, and his own backstory reveals his challenges, and he sees hers. He understands that being a woman in that society and trying to conform to those sort of expectations just was not her personality. She was brought up differently in a male dominated household. So she was allowed to experience something other women were not. And it gave her a better view of what strategically can be done if you are mutually respected by your colleagues or your fighters. So you're having his viewpoint from his own experiences, giving her more freedom than maybe most men would have done within that setting.
So, of course, this bond isn't without its friction. Her brother Benjamin strictly forbids her from associating with him. How does the tension of sibling boundaries, specifically her brother Benjamin forbidding her from associating with him, push Owena to define her own path?
Well, I think that Benjamin is just thinking that she's the younger sister. He should be protecting her because he took on the role when their father died. And I think that's something that in any society you have someone that is supposed to protect the younger, what he thinks is a weaker person, even though they've been brought up, quite similar in what they were allowed to do, playing sword fighting and strategy and horse riding. And I think he wants to keep her safe, even though she's more than capable of looking after herself. And I would like his viewpoint to change, but I can understand that he's trying to protect, because obviously his role has been determined by the society as much as hers.
So, after escaping captivity, Owena and her group face new dangers on the run. What is the very first thing Owena has to reclaim within herself when her life is completely stripped away after her narrow escape?
I think she realises that she can contribute in a purposeful way rather than shrink into the background. Because although she's with her friend Josephine and they're sort of put to one side so that the men do the fighting, she understands that they have their own fears, their own worries about how they're going to get out of this predicament, and that she's going to know better than maybe another would that you can overcome things. And that's back to her upbringing. I think that she's much stronger and determined than maybe her counterparts, and that gives her more information to gather from, to use once they actually get to escape.
So, you are an incredibly prolific author. You write children's books, young adult fiction, poetry, and you even got 11 published books with 9 more on the way. How do you technically shift gears between writing for children, young adult, and adult audiences without losing your core voice?
Well, I'm what they call a pantster, although I prefer the term free flow writer. And once I get an idea, I start just putting down, maybe it's a scene or it's a piece of dialogue. And the more I write, the more it's apparent what the genre and the age group are. And I don't know, maybe it's way my mind works, but I like to have the story formulate like in a movie in my head. And I just have a very organized sort of personality. So once I have written the first sort of several pages, then I know where the story's going. I know who it would, be for. It's like, once you've got the language going and you know the character, you know who would enjoy that character and in what situation you can put them. So if you've got like a small child, you're not going to put them in an adult centric narrative. And I think it's just how my mind works, to be honest with you. It's like it's easy to go with the flow, and as soon as the story develops, it's quite an apparent where I should place the actual book once it's finished.
So, beyond your own desk, you are deeply embedded in the literary community, serving as the secretary of the Writers Foundation of Strathcona County, hosting circles, and blogging to a global audience. How does dedicating your time to local and global writing communities feed back into your personal creative process?
Well, the actual group that I'm secretary of is the reason that I'm writing. I happened upon them 2009, and it was the group support and encouragement that's actually gave me the reason to write. And during the last 17 years of connecting with them, learning from them, and giving back has been an incredible source of inspiration. So I've learnt not just from people within the group, but beyond the group. It's like having a huge classroom. It's not always sort of within my locale. It's much further afield now. So I do online courses, I go to conferences, I go to book fairs, I meet other authors. And the community itself is such a way of encompassing everybody's voice, how they write, their styles, and that's the inspiration for me, that everybody does have a voice. And I've built mine over that period of time. And it's nice to know that when people read my books, they know it's me, even if they haven't seen my name on the front, which is a huge compliment, which I'm very pleased about and very grateful for.
So the Commodore's gift leads to a massive win or die fight to restore the rightful king to the throne. How do you balance the massive high stakes scale of an empire wide war with the quiet, intimate, emotional arcs of your characters?
Well, I think with any conflict, the overview is of the whole. However, the individuals fighting on both sides have lives prior to the conflict, and it's their thoughts, their fear, their feelings that need to be reflected. No matter their alliances or which side they're on, every person has a life that they want to save. I mean, everybody wants to go home at after the fight, obviously. So you have this huge global sort of view of just what's happening, but that's made up of individuals. So it's their feelings that I think you need to encompass to show that it's not always them and us, it's us. Because regardless of which side you're on, you still have a life before conflict, and you have a life after the conflict if you're lucky. And I think that needs to be shown as part of the fight, and win or lose, no matter what side you're on, you have to be understanding that is an individual, it's a person.
So, what specific truth or message do you hope this novel offers to modern readers who feel trapped by the rigid societal expectations of their own empires?
And I think there's always hope to overcome whatever expectations are put upon us, no matter where we are. We can find our people and join together in strength and understanding. And you're not an isolated person. I mean, no one is living in isolation. There's always someone that has similar views, similar lifestyle, and that makes sure that you're gathering with those people, and that within that gathering you can find the strength to show who you are and what you believe in. And I think that gives a greater understanding for people, so that you're not always saying, well, this is my viewpoint and yours doesn't matter. You have to find the mutual understanding, or understand someone else's point of view, even if you don't agree with it, but find the base understanding, the base truth that both of you have. And I think that's why the book gives everybody an opportunity to understand that.
So, looking at the overarching narrative of this book, what does the symbolic concept of the gift in your title, the Commodore's gift, actually represent as the story evolves?
Well, as I said before, I mean, that the gift was actually started as a short story about the toy maker in it. But as I sort of developed the story and Owena stepped forward and said, this story is mine, I understood that she became the gift actually to the rebel force, with improvements to the lives of the men and the strategies she employed, and her strong associations leading to the betterment for the outcome. I mean, she became the personification of the gift, that without her and what she did within the rebel force, they may not have been as successful.
Mandy, thank you so much for sharing your time, your wisdom, and the brilliant, defiant spirit of your world with us today. It's been an absolute joy.
Well, thank you for having me, and I hope that people understand where I'm coming from when they read the Commodore's gift. And I'm always open to people sending me a message to ask me more questions, because I think that's the joy of putting stories out in the world, that people have a view on it and want to actually converse about it.
Of course. To everyone listening, you can find The Commodore's Gift by Mandy Eve-Barnett in paperback and ebook worldwide. I will have a link to the book in the show notes. Be sure to visit her online and dive deeper into her incredible multi-genre catalog. And remember, the mind is the most important story that we'll ever tell. Keep questioning the Empire, keep carving your own path, and thank you as always for listening to The Mind of Sai Marie.